Welcome to Ladies Talking Love, Episode 8, Unleashing Intimacy with Dan and Emily Purcell. It's Ladies Talking Love, a community of women uncovering more joy and fulfillment in sex as we learn from experts and amazing women like you. Together, let's create a world where women's sexuality is celebrated and understood, beginning with our own. I'm your host, Ariel Finlinson. Let's talk love. I'm super excited to welcome Dan and Emily Purcell onto Ladies Talking Love today. Dan and Emily are the founders of Get Your Marriage On. They've been friends since middle school and have been married for over 17 years. They are the parents of 6 children, and they create apps, put on events, host a podcast, and coach other couples, all designed to strengthen marriages intimately. Besides the arduous yet rewarding lifestyle of running a large-ish entrepreneur family, Emily is an accomplished pianist, and Dan is training for his 4th and maybe final marathon. Hey, ladies, I could really use your help for some upcoming roundtable episodes. You can volunteer to participate as a small group of 2 to 4 friends or individually, and we'll create a group. Topics for our future roundtable episodes are wide open, but here's some ideas that I've been thinking about. Periods to birth control, sex advice you've received, the good and the bad, to religious, familial, or cultural norms that affected your view of sexuality. And of course, feel free to suggest your own topic when you volunteer. You can reach out to me on Instagram at ladies.talkinglove or email hello@ladiestalkinglove.com. I'm super excited to meet you and talk love. I'm so excited to welcome Dan and Emily Purcell onto Ladies Talking Love today. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks. We're so happy to be here.
Could you tell us a little bit about what kind of inspired you to start the app Intimately Us?
Yeah, it started a few years ago. I had a conversation with a friend, and he was opening up about his sex life a little bit to me. And these aren't conversations I normally have with other friends. So this was like totally outside of my comfort zone. And he was talking about some of the things he and his wife were doing and changing in their love life that were bringing a lot of results to them and a lot of more sexual satisfaction and how they felt closer and more bonded together, and they're communicating better and they're parenting better, all because the sex started to get really good. Mm-hmm. And first of all, I was blushing the whole time we're talking, like, what are we talking about? And it also really made me self-conscious because, like, deep down inside, I knew in the back of my head somewhere that sex was a good thing, but it's definitely taboo. We don't talk about it, let alone talk about it as openly as he was to me. And also, I was uncomfortable that I was uncomfortable with the topic. So, and the conversation mostly revolved around, in that particular situation, his wife wanted a little bit more out of their sex life. So she was approaching him saying, hey, I really want to improve things in the bedroom, and how she was a little uncomfortable bringing up that topic. How he kind of got defensive a little bit at first, but then, trying to work.
What do you mean? It's not good?
Right. Exactly. And anyway, it made me self-conscious. So I'm like, am I a good enough lover? Like, what does my wife think? Like, anyway, so that night I'd come home and say, Emily, you'll never guess what kind of a conversation I had today. And that night we talked for hours, and the next night we talked for more hours. And probably the first time in our marriage, we've been married 13 years at that point, we really started having the really heart-to-heart, deep, in-depth conversations. It started with sex, but it moved to other areas of our marriage too, like, what do you think about this? How am I doing there? What are your expectations here? And one of the things I learned through that is it was really scary and vulnerable to talk about sex at such a deep and fundamental level together. But also, we both realized there's a lot of information that we didn't have. We both come from really good families. Sex in our growing up wasn't talked about a lot. If it was usually in the thou shalt not category of things and all the harm and damage it could have. And yeah, it's a good thing too, but no one ever talked about what a good sex life looks like,
Mm-hmm.
or what it is. So we just limited experience for us is like, yeah, sex is like 10 minutes, lights off in the missionary position, and that's it. Like,
Yeah.
we didn't realize there's so much more richness to it. So we started we're both a little bit nerdy, so we like went on and bought a bunch of books, and we read a lot of books together. I read a lot of books alone, and I'd share with Emily what we've learned. Like, in a year's time, we went through 12 books together. We found
Oh, awesome.
podcasts and blogs, and we started to really like dive into like all the beautiful and wonderful things that sex can provide, and it started to expand our repertoire and our connection, what can be. We started experimenting with different things, and we started to really like sex.
I'm so curious, what were some of the things you realized those couple days conversations, that information that you didn't have? And what information did you find that helped you to improve your sex life?
For me, it was, this sounds so funny for me to say it now, but there's definitely the physical aspects of sex, and I say these things really respectfully, but like, women don't orgasm through intercourse generally.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I so in the past when I'd have
We should preach
frustration.
that a lot more. Let's just say that.
Exactly, exactly. That just wasn't part of my like education, or
Mm-hmm.
people really don't talk about it. Or maybe if they did talk about it, I wasn't mature enough to listen to that message at that time, because I was like, oh, sex, put up a wall, don't want to hear about it
Mm-hmm.
because it might be bad. But now realizing it can be really good and helpful. So learning that if you want sex to be really good for both couples, you don't just focus on only intercourse.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of other stimulation and activity and everything that's really important. So that's more on the physical side.
Mm-hmm.
And also for me, it was learning that sex is playtime. Like, it's adult. It's a domain of play for adults. And my inner creativity was like completely unleashed through those conversations. Like, ooh, we could try this, and we could do this, and we could do that, and like, wouldn't that be so fun? So in a way, it felt like I was like going to a theme park for the first time, because in your mind you thought, you go to a park, there's only a slide. Like, that was like our
Mm-hmm.
experience. Now we're at theme park, and there's like rides galore, and there's the teacups, and there's the upside down corkscrew roller coasters, and there's like all these things, and it's all good and it's all fun. And so it kind of really expanded what the capacity is for each of us.
I love that comparison of the theme park, especially for me. I hate the spinning rides. And so there's all these rides, and you're going to find, oh, these ones I like more than these ones. And let's try these ones. And there's just so much opportunity to try and also learn, that one's not my favorite. I don't want to do that one again. And it could change over time. But I think that's a really great comparison. Did you have any thoughts on that, Emily?
The only thought that I can think of is my own capacity to orgasm or to have those sexual feelings increased as I learned about what's even possible, and being okay with having the conversations together and learning together just opened up my idea of just the ideas that I'm capable, and there's great potential and huge potential. And I always knew that sex was a bond. For us, at least, it was, even when it might not have been as pleasurable for me, it was always, I never felt like after having sex, oh, I wish we didn't do that. I never felt that way. It was always, this was so good for our marriage and this was good for both of us. But learning that I had more in me, more capacity to enjoy, it just brought so much more to live and more to thrive in within myself and within our marriage.
Thanks so much for sharing that. I had a similar experience, except for me, I felt a lot of the anger and frustration in my relationship because I craved more, but I didn't know how to access it, and I felt like I was missing out on something. But I love how you knew it was good, but then it just opened up this whole array of more beauty and more potential. And I was curious, when Dan came home after having that conversation with his friend, what was your experience? Was that really hard to kind of jump right in and talk about sex? It seemed like it hadn't been a big conversation in your marriage up until that point, or was it fairly easy? What was your experience with that conversation?
I felt like it was good. We were both on the same page. We'd talked about it on a very general level, not very specific, but it felt like because we were both really new at it, we're going at it kind of at the same angle. And it felt like a beautiful journey because we're doing it together. And that was unifying.
I realize most couples listening to this, their experience is going to be very different than ours. Usually you're going to have it be just the wife or just the husband that's totally into it, and the spouse is not interested in engaging at all. So our experience, I think, is kind of more, it's special for us because it felt really like a journey we were doing together.
I think that's a huge way that we can kind of shift our mindset, though, because it should be a journey and it should be something that we're on together and that we're working on together. So we're both being fulfilled. And I think just for me, even that mindset shift of like, this is for both of us and we're going to be on this journey together to figure it out together. It's made it a lot better for me and my husband. It wasn't just me who improved or him, we were on this journey together. I love that perspective that you guys shared. So you had some of these conversations around sex and intimacy. How did you come up with the idea for Intimately Us, the app?
So for us, we started connecting really well when sex was more playful and fun. So we started creating like little bedroom games for ourselves, and we totally nerd out on like, I don't know, plan out like let's do these little games or whatever. And I'm a software developer. That's my background, and I run a custom software development company, and we build apps. So I thought it would be really fun to take a lot of these little games that we've made and put them in a digital format, like into an app. Then you can update them easily. You can like customize it to comfort levels and everything like that. And we looked on the App Store, and at the time, there's tons of apps for sex in the App Store, but they're all crass and raunchy. Like it's as if they're all trying to muscle up to be the number one spot of the most extreme this or that. And it was like not in line with our values.
Yeah.
And it just felt dirty. I wouldn't want to download, or don't want to be caught download with any of those. And I think the main element that was missing in all of them was the connection aspect, the intimacy aspect of sex, because it's really easy to just focus on the physical side, because that can be really touch and go. But to really enjoy this a deeper depth of sexual connection, you've got to have good emotional intimacy and connection first. So we couldn't find an app that kind of yes, it was fun, it's a bedroom game, but there's also this very human aspect of connecting with your loved one. The other thing too is, to us, sex is always in the context of marriage, and that's the way we think of it. So, and most of the apps out there don't look at it that way. And so having things in the right context really helped us. Anyway, we saw an opportunity there. So we kind of put on our entrepreneur hat a little bit and like, hey, let's make an app, put it out there and see what happens. And then, holy cow, we've had tons and tons of downloads, over 100,000 downloads in a short amount of time. People really like the app, and it's really fitting a need, because there's that Christian-friendly group in our country that doesn't want something crass and raunchy on their phone, but something also not lame. They want something really helpful too. So that's kind of how the app came to be.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I love too, because I think a lot of those other apps, they're missing the whole purpose of sex, that it's not just about our bodies, it's about our whole life that we put together. And that's what makes it beautiful and fulfilling and joyful. So as you kind of created this app, what have you defined as intimacy? What is intimacy?
To me, intimacy is being known and knowing. And you've probably heard that definition before, but I think of it as like, imagine a graph. You have an x-axis and a y-axis. One axis is like knowing, and that's like a willingness to really know your spouse for who they are fundamentally and at a really deep level. And the other axis is a willingness to be known. And that requires a lot of exposure. Like when you're married for a first year or two, you can probably hide a lot of your flaws. But when you get to year 7, by year 7 or more, there's no more hiding. And your own insecurities and idiosyncrasies and whatever, there's a lot there. But being able to be comfortable with it, and like this is who I am. This is what I care about. This is where my heart is. And being able to share that with someone, it takes a whole lot of courage, especially when they differ from you and they have a different opinion about certain things than you. And then, on contrast, when your spouse has very different views or feelings about something, and be able to like hold that with grace and understanding and compassion, then you're really high on the X and the Y axis. So that's like high intimacy to me. So it's knowing and being known at a deep level, but it takes a lot of courage to get there, because you got to be okay with things that are going to not be in line with what you think all the time, and still hold that space for like holding on to myself and holding on to the other.
Yeah. And we can talk about this, and it sounds so beautiful, but let's get into the like nitty gritty. So what does this look like? Because the day to day, this is hard to do. And this can be really hard to let someone see you as you are, with all your flaws and imperfections and beauty, and vice versa, accept some of those flaws and imperfections of your spouse, but also love the beauty and love why you love them. What are some of the things the app helps, and also you've found in your marriage to increase intimacy and really to know and be known?
So in the evenings, we have late night conversations. And when we just take that time to listen to each other and to let each other like open up and vocalize and or internalize kind of what's going on, we're giving room for each other to share, and we're giving room in our hearts to be able to receive each other and where we are. It's discovering like just what causes those negative triggers in us, and finding ways that are going to lead us to a better, more healthier attitude. Jennifer Finlayson Fife does like a one up and one down. It's like an immature way that our tendency to just, I'm better than or less than or whatever, in how we act toward one another, but being able to get real in our conversation. And I guess for us, it works in the late nights.
Why does that always happen? My husband and I ask that all the time. Why does it have to be the late night? We were together from like 7 to 10 and the conversation didn't start till 11. Come on.
Right.
That's funny. Just even preparing for this podcast was a huge act of intimacy for both of us, because I come to Emily, Ariel wants to interview me and you for this podcast. And so I'm really excited about this opportunity, but I know for Emily, this is really hard for her to do. So I'm immediately like a little guarded bringing it up, because I know it's going to be a huge ask. But that's part of being intimate, is being known, right? It's so, Emily, I really want to do this, and it'd be great if you do it with me. Then creating space for her to really respond. Now, she might say no to me, or she might say yes, but regardless what she chooses, for me to be able to hold that and what she likes or doesn't like. Maybe another example, the other night we were talking about something I want to do sexually, and it is something that kind of made Emily uncomfortable and doesn't want to do, or she has a lot of questions about that. So that's okay, but it took a lot of courage for me to open up and like say, this is on my mind. I think this would be really good for us. And I'm coming more from like an advocacy, like I'm advocating for something I want. I think it would be good and enhance our relationship. And it was something that Emily particularly wasn't really comfortable doing, or didn't like that idea or that concept. But I don't punish her for it. I don't like put her down for it or whatever. I'm creating space for two people in the marriage instead of it's always just one person or whatever. That takes a lot of maturity and courage and a lot of consideration and compassion. But without that, you can't have true intimacy. In order for there to be passion in any relationship, there has to be choice. So intimacy is the process of creating enough oxygen, enough air for both people to be able to like freely choose each other, instead of feeling like you have to do it or you have to choose. So that takes a bit of work to do.
And in allowing that choice for both of you, what have you found in the rejection? I guess you could say, call it rejection, but that can be hard, because it's like, I showed you who I was or what I wanted and you didn't want it. And that shouldn't mean in our minds that that was a bad idea or that it wasn't what we wanted. But how do you kind of accept that and be able to acknowledge like this was what I wanted, but that's okay that that's their choice and that doesn't make me less, or I shouldn't feel bad about my desire that I wanted this. How do you kind of work through some of those feelings?
Oh, that's a hard one.
It's so hard.
It's hard because everyone says, "Oh, just don't take it personally,"
Yeah,
and that is the answer.
I
But
do all the
I
time.
know it's still so hard not to take it personally.
But it's also living in a place of yourself and recognizing what it is that I really want and what it is that he really wants, and recognizing that we're both right. I mean, there's like not a right or a wrong, but it's just how we feel. And if it conflicts, it's hard. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's just being real though and open about it. And that's, I guess, what intimacy for me too is like just being seen and being open with each other. Sometimes it means even for me allowing myself to see myself, to give myself the time and the attention and even the effort that it takes to listen to me and what I want so that I can even share what I want. Because
Mhm.
sometimes I just don't even know. And it takes time for me to figure out what it is that I want. And then I can share it when I know that.
I love that point though, because it takes a lot of bravery to say, no, I don't want that as well. Sometimes I've definitely had experiences in my marriage where I've been like, sure, okay, even though I had a little twinge of a feeling that maybe I didn't want it. And it turns out way worse because didn't listen. I didn't acknowledge, oh, I do feel a little uncomfortable. Let me acknowledge it. And if I had, it would have hurt my husband, I'm sure, a little bit, but it would have been better in the long run, I think, for both of us. And I think, Dan, you were going to say something on that too.
Oh, just piggybacking on that, you got to you got to be solid within yourself first in order to have intimacy. For instance, let's say I was back to this conversation we had a few nights ago, something I want to do sexually. If I was really unsure about it within myself, and I'm asking Emily to do it because I want her to validate my desire, like I want her to legitimize my sexuality or whatever, then I'm depending on her to make everything I think be okay versus like me doing the work beforehand and thinking it through within myself, or maybe taking it to God in prayer or whatever, right? Is this really good for me? When you're solid within yourself first, then it doesn't feel like a rejection because you're able to hold on to yourself better. But that takes a lot of work and a lot of maturity. And they say it takes couples that have been married for 20, 30, 40 years. Their sex life is amazing compared to the newlyweds because of the maturity and of the heart. You know each other and you're more like solid within yourself because sex gets better when you get older.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. Got to keep working. But man, what you just said, like stabbed to the heart. I'm like, oh, yep, that is really true. And that hurts because I've totally done that. I'm not really sure about this, but how about you validate me?
Yes, we do it
instead
all
of
the
like,
time. Uh-huh.
instead of really figuring it out myself. And I know in experiences where I have, instead of asking other people first and really taking time, that bravery comes and I'm able to say, here I am. This is what I think. This is what I'm planning to do with this decision. And even if they disagree, and I'm speaking also more outside of my marriage too in some aspects, but even if they disagree, it's like, well, I feel good about it. And in my marriage, if of course my husband felt bad about it, we would have more conversations about it. But it's a really great thing to come to that place of, here I am, accept me. Like,
Right.
and if you don't, that's okay, because that's okay.
And that principle works not just sexually, but even on spiritual things or even financial things. We talk about self reliance a lot, right? Becoming self reliant. If we always depend on other people for our faith and our beliefs instead of building that within ourselves, then we're never going to be able to stand on our own and help other people. That same principle applies sexually. If we always want our spouse to legitimize our sexuality because we're not sure about it within ourselves, for instance, some men have a hard time. They want sex a lot because they don't feel good enough about themselves. They want their spouse to caretake them through sex because then they feel legitimized and loved in the act of sex. So when they don't feel good about themselves, they turn to their spouse to have sex with them so that they feel better about themselves afterwards, instead of figuring out a way to take care of themselves first, fundamentally. Then sex doesn't become like just a need to fill a hole within you that will never be filled. You're able to fill that yourself, and sex becomes now of a giving gift and something you share together instead of something you just take.
Yeah.
I'd also add, if we're coming from a place of fear, if I'm afraid, or if I'm jealous, or if I feel any sort of an anger or something disruptive within me, I tend to come at it and in the wrong way. Like I don't act my best. I'm not able to listen, or I'm not able to give of myself. It's because I'm off. And if it's the idea that Dan might be bringing up that I'm uncomfortable with because I'm afraid, or because I'm jealous, or because, any of those feelings, I'm not in my right place to be able to return what true to me or true to him. It's off. I don't know how to relate that to what we're saying.
I'm really glad you brought that up, actually, because I was thinking in myself, I think this story will kind of illustrate what you're thinking about. But what Dan was talking about with men wanting to be validated in their sex, I actually experienced but the opposite, because I went into marriage feeling like my husband is going to have this super high sex drive that I need to cater to, because that's what I had been culturalized to believe. And so I went in like wanting to feel validated that he wanted me by wanting sex more often, but it turned out I wasn't listening to him, and my acts were out of fear of rejection or fear of not being fulfilled, and I was trying to fill this gap in me, but it wasn't working because I wasn't really communicating with him, and it wasn't what he needed, and it was just a really messy experience. And I think that when we come out of fear or jealousy or these other things, instead of knowing each other, being known, being seen, that it creates a lot of hurt in a relationship, and not a place that's safe to be built. Is that kind of where you were going with that?
Yep. Yeah, thanks. That's yes.
It's a hard experience, and I think it can go both ways, a man or a woman. Like, we can
Right.
have those on opposite sides and it can look different, but it's real and it's so hard. We've talked a lot about becoming more intimately connected, and this of course isn't just in the sexual act of being sexual, but it's your whole life. It's your whole life together. How has working on your intimacy, becoming more intimately connected in this whole realm of your life, affected your sexual relationship?
It's affected us amazingly. There are times when sex is absolutely so transcendent, absolute fireworks, and you know, you feel weak in the knees afterwards, and for the next few days, you just feel this amazing, overwhelmingly loving feeling towards each other. So the depths to which sex really can fulfill me and us, it's been like no other, and it just keeps getting better and better for us. One of the things I've learned is sex, the act of sex, is very vulnerable. I think it's the most vulnerable thing that we ever do as humans with another person.
Mm-hmm.
And
childbirth is up there too.
yes, exactly. Totally. I kind of wonder, this is God's way of growing. It's like a people growing machine.
Mm-hmm.
It's that sexual arena is so core to who we are, and it takes a great deal of, I know that you can do it wrong and still have sex, but like if you want to have that really deep transcendent experience, it takes a whole lot of intimacy. That's that courage and consideration that we've been talking about. And then holy cow, it's great. Now there's a ton of benefits to a great sex life that we've felt. Like we get along better, we sleep better, we're like goofier, we're flirting all the time. We're patting each other's bums as we walk by in the kitchen. We're also like more on the same page. We want to tackle life together. I love that Emily is at my side. And for some reason, the sky is a little bluer and the grass grows greener. In business, I work better. Everything else in life just really clicks better when your sex life is really good.
They really do go hand in hand. You can't just take away the sex part of your life and your life's not affected. It's all in one, and that's part of you. And if whether you're working on it or you're not, it's still affecting you. It could be any part of your life that you are working on that also affects our sex life, because we're working on, like Dan said, finances, or we are working on, raising kids or whatever. When we're on the same page and we can open up and be seen by each other and have our feelings and thoughts heard and our ideas heard, and we have better sex. And the same thing goes when we have better sex, the rest of our life goes that much better. It's definitely like not necessarily a teeter-totter, but they affect each other like a teeter-totter. No.
And just keep getting up and up and up.
Right. Yeah. Like both sides are going up, maybe like an elevator.
Like a virtuous cycle, maybe.
Yeah, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
That is so important to recognize, because I think sometimes we can be in a hard relationship with our sex life and we don't realize how much it's affecting our everyday life. But when they're both working in tandem, I love your guys' description of just it grows and gets better and better and better. And I'm performing better in my everyday life. We're more connected and our sex life is getting better because of everyday life, and everyday life is getting better because of sex. I just think that is such a beautiful way to kind of come to a culmination of why we even have sex as a gift in our relationships. I just think it's such a beautiful part of our relationships. And I was curious, with especially Dan being so open about your guys' sex life publicly on the app and your organization and things, because I think he does a little bit more of the talking usually. How has that affected your relationship? Is it hard for you, Emily? Is it hard for you, Dan? How does it affect you to be so open about your sex life with other people?
First of all, we do have boundaries. We're not going to talk about a play-by-play of like every encounter, right? But I think it's, if no one's going to talk in general terms about how to build a great sex life, then you're not going to learn how to do it. There's also the public side and there's also the private side. In reality, we're unlike no other couple. We still have our differences and we argue and we yell at our kids, and like we're still very, very human and very flawed and very imperfect people. And we, people go, oh, you work on a sex app all the time and you get to like talk to couples about sexuality, you do your podcast, you write blogs, you do all this stuff. You must be having really good sex. And I think in general, I'd honestly say for us, it's really good. But we still have, dry spells. We still have times when it's a big flop. Sex is a dud. It wasn't as great as it was hoping to be. So I think I'd like for people to understand, like, reality is reality. Not every time you're going to engage is going to be fantastic, or you're going to not be in the mood sometimes, or you're going to be sick or be up with kids at the night, or you're going to have to get up early, so you're not going to be in the mood to engage in anything, or you're going to have had that argument and you're not going to really feel like being on the same page. So there's a lot of, let's just get real. And yeah, it's not always roses and fireworks every single moment. Life is life. So you work with it.
It's also interesting when Dan's doing this a lot. So he's learning a lot and teaching a lot and talking with people a lot about sex. And I'm home and I get to raise children day after day and hour after hour, and read with them and help teach them and take them to their practices and
cook meals and
that's my so at the end of the day when he's like, and look at this and I've got this other idea, and I'm going, whoa, wait, hold back. I need to get to my level of what I want. I need some of my space to be able to say, okay, let me breathe for a minute, and then I can think about maybe getting into the sex conversation. Just a minute. Just
yes.
Bear with me for a minute. But with that said, the other night, it was really, really sweet. Dan asked a question that was like, what was the question? It was,
what would you find pleasurable?
What would you find pleasurable tonight? And he had already like lit a massage candle. Like he's like willing to give me a massage or whatever. Like, I mean, I could tell.
I dimmed the lights. I had the twinkle lights going around the bed. I cleaned the room. I took care of the clothes off the floor. I had set up this. I was pretty horny. Like, I'm ready to go, right? I'm letting her know. But my question was, what would be pleasurable for you tonight?
Yeah. And by him asking that question, I just thought, wow, I could sense that he wanted sex, but I couldn't go there. That was something that I had to put a little mini wall, like, okay, but what can I do? And I thought, well, I could probably let's just cuddle naked, because I'm just so tired. I can't even, the idea of getting out of bed to have a massage was too much energy. Anyway, it just seemed like for me to get there was way too hard. So I thought, okay, well, let's just cuddle. Let's just cuddle. And we talked and we cuddled and it was great. And it wasn't even
And you fell asleep too.
had a little mini nap, but it was like what I needed. And it opened up for me a next level opportunity. And we were able to have amazing sex night. I could not have put in my mind that that was even a possibility 10 minutes before or whatever, however long it ended up happening. But it was like, okay, what is it that I can give my basic level right now? And it just, it could flourish. It could grow. And it didn't, I'm not saying that it always has to happen that there's sex after. It doesn't, because just the feeling of connection, however that happens, is good enough. And not even like good enough, it's amazing. It's connecting and it's building, and build on the littlest things. That's just do that moment after moment. It's the little things that matter. It's not any big event.
Thank you so much for sharing that example. That is just a perfect example, especially thinking about, I think there's this culture that we're not allowed to talk about our sex life because it's too personal. But from this example, you didn't give details, you didn't go in, but you shared really important points for people to learn from about how to create a healthy sexual relationship. And there's so much we can talk about to learn from each other without going into details that are going to be too deep, because it is a really special thing and we don't want to give too much information, but we can talk about so much more than we do. And I think that example, Emily, was just beautiful, how you were able to say what you needed and Dan was saying what he wanted, showing you, but also it came together and you were both able to be together in that connection. And it did end up in a beautiful sex night, but if it hadn't, I think there still would have been a lot of beautiful connection and understanding. And that's what we're all about.
Right.
Thank you so much for both coming on. I really appreciated having both of your perspectives. This was such a great interview. And I would love to just kind of end. I think Dan on his podcast usually asks for the one black belt tip. So, what is your black belt tip for couples wanting to create more intimacy in their relationships?
I've got like 80.
Well, you can let's
So-
start simple with especially people who are maybe just discovering this or just at a place where they really need to start slow. What are some of your basic couple tips that you would give them?
Okay. We'll go a basic tip and then maybe a black belt tip.
Sounds great.
A basic tip, I would say, well, I've got two, sorry. One is
Go for it.
out of small things are great things brought to pass. And that's no more real than in a intimate relationship. So I believe it's the small little daily acts of intimacy over time done consistently that matter a whole lot more than those occasional one at a time grandiose acts of intimacy. And I stress that in the Intimately Us app, there's a daily intimacy challenge, and most of them are done like 5 minutes or less. But the point is you do something every day for your marriage. You do something every day for your spouse. And it's those little acts, because really it's an iceberg. A great fireworks and amazing sex night or whatever is going to be just the tip of the iceberg. But you got to focus on everything under the surface. And that includes the daily little acts of service. The second basic tip I'd offer is expand your definition of what sex is. If it's just intercourse or orgasm alone, then you're missing out, I think. There's a whole lot more to it. Sex can be anything that's pleasurable and connecting. So for one couple, it might be cuddling naked. Of course, there's no like intercourse going on, but that would be very connecting or pleasurable. It could be going out to dinner. It could be dancing. It could be a really good heart-to-heart deep conversation. It could be going on a drive. It could be something really fun, like something really silly, getting out the whipped cream and playing, like whatever you want to do, right? But what you do is you prioritize pleasure, is my point. So like that story that Emily said, what would be pleasurable for you? And so we're focused on what's going to be pleasurable, what you think would be pleasurable, not what is sexual to you, like what is pleasurable to you. So when you focus on pleasure and follow the pleasure, then you find a lot more space for that.
I love those.
And then a black belt tip would be, so let's say you're already in a good place and you want to amp up sex to the next level. I would say make it fun. Some of the fun times we've had, we got a shower curtain. So it's like a vinyl sheet. We put it on the bed and got some baby oil and squirted it on. And we played on that, and your whole body is slippery. You're like slipping all over each other and slipping all over the bed. And that was, you can't even get up on all fours on the bed before you like slip onto your stomach, right? It is so fun. That was really fun. Another fun time we've had is we got a little bit of minute to win it games, but we put a little bedroom twist to them. And I don't think we've ever laughed so hard in our life. Another thing we did that was fun is we got like a Jenga game, and on each wooden block with a Sharpie, we wrote a little foreplay act, like make out or back massage, and you can let your imagination go. And then we played Jenga, where every block you pulled out, you do that, whatever's written on it. That made it fun because you don't know what you're going to get next. And the app is full of all sorts of games too. And so that's black belt to me, is when it can make sex fun and playful. It takes the pressure off of, am I doing the right move? How is she doing? Like, is this taking too long? It doesn't, none of that matters, because you're just having fun in a very adult and intimate way. And those sorts of things are like really, really fun.
I love those tips. Those are so great.
Oh, I thought of one more black belt tip.
Yeah, go for it.
One other black belt tip I want to share is joining a group or some sort of joining a conversation. I'm on a Facebook group with about 30 other men, and it's like our guys group. We're in the similar stage of life, similar marriage type situation, and we can swap stories and ideas and thoughts. And it kind of makes the conversation about sexuality and being a husband and being a father, it kind of makes that safe. And I learn a ton from these other amazing men. And I like what you're doing too, Ariel, with your group, that you're encouraging these conversations and like joining this through your Instagram and things like that. So I'd encourage anyone that wants to really level up in their marriage, find a men's group or a women's group and like go to share ideas in a safe place. It's kind of like what I wish church was like sometimes, a place we can really be open and talk about what we're really dealing with without judgment and compassion. We can really help each other with those things. And I think that's what that does when you can find that group.
I totally agree. And that's a lot of what you do. And I do too, is just, let's get the conversation open. We can learn so much from each other. And just when we're dry of ideas, I love having the app. That's such a great idea. And your friends be like, oh, what was something you did to spice up life a little bit? I'm in the drudgery of dishes and diapers and whatever, and I think that's such a great idea. We talked about the app a little bit. Can you tell us where we can find you?
Yes. Search the App Store for Intimately Us. And our website is getyourmarriageon.com, where we have tons of other resources too.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today. This conversation was amazing. Thanks so much, Emily and Dan.
Thank you.
So much of this interview was exactly what I needed to hear, and I hope you felt the same way and learned as much as I did. I just wanted to briefly recap some of Dan and Emily's tips for us. First of all, they talked about that it's the little acts of intimacy that really add up and are so important. Next, we need to expand the definition of sex to what's pleasurable for both partners. And for some black belt tips, he said make sex a time to play and join a group of people in a similar stage of life where you can share and learn together. I'm so grateful to have you here listening to Ladies Talking Love. If this podcast has been helpful for you, I would love if you could go and leave a review. Thanks so much for talking love. Join the conversation at ladies.talkinglove on Instagram and tag your friends who would like to participate. You can also check out our website, ladiestalkinglove.com, where you can access each episode and join our exclusive newsletter. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Instagram or by email to hello@ladiestalkinglove.com as we learn together. Thanks for talking love.